welcome to today's Friday Facebook session. Here we are again. Today you are graced with the presence of Simon Dalley and I flying solo. This is going to be fun, isn't it, Simon Dalley?
It's going to be fun, Rara. It's always fun.
Yeah. I'm sorry we're a bit late as well. Simon Dalley was having technical difficulties with his phone, so we're a bit late getting started. So anyway, today we are here to talk about the fabulously exciting world of domain names. Bom, bom, bom. I can't contain my excitement, can you?
Were you directly asking me then? I think domains are an exciting thing. And
I know, this is the thing. You genuinely do think they're exciting. What's going to be my challenge over the next half hour is keeping you in check so that we don't have a situation like last time when you started to talk about domain names and you spent 45 minutes whittering on about servers in Belgium.
I was going to say something about servers in Belgium. Well, not necessarily just Belgium. It's a good example, though. I'll remember that.
Right. Okay. Right. Well, first of all, let's get this show under the road. Let's get the show under the road. Let's bury it. Anyway,
let's just start again.
First question, Simon Dalley. What is a domain name, and what's the difference between a domain name and a URL? Let's just do some definitions quickly first, please.
A domain name. So Google.com is a domain. Google.com/login is a URL. So
okay, and why is that?
So the domain is the identifier if you like. It's a way of it's a memorable piece of information that we use, because if you didn't have a domain name, you just have numbers and letters. You just have an IP address. Sorry, not even letters, just numbers.
Yeah. So a domain name is the bit that you buy, isn't it? So it's like, for example, we've got www.GrowTraffic.co.uk. So that's the thing that you buy, and then anything after that, so /contact page, /about us, that then just becomes a URL. It is a page on your domain name, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah. It's rented. They're rented as well. They're not bought. They're rented.
And is buying a domain name, this seems to be, from my experience, it's like the first thing that somebody does. So they think, right, all right, I'm going to set up a business. Oh, I need a website. Right, I'm going to go and buy a domain name. So generally speaking, this will be the first action that somebody takes when they are setting up a business and or a website or whatever, isn't it? So it's a really important step to get right, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be one of the first things that you do. So I was just on a call this morning. We were talking branding and talking about some different ideas for names of a business or a campaign. And so what we did, the first thing we did was kind of, came up with a load of names and ideas. And then the next thing that we did was we checked to see if it was trademarked or anything like that. And then the next thing we did was check to see if there was a domain free for it.
Yeah, because I mean, this is a really important thing I think people don't think about as well. It's that first day. You think up a really good name for your company, that you've got to check, has somebody already got that name, or has somebody already got that domain name? Because quite often somebody might have it. Like, for example, with us, somebody has GrowTraffic.com. They're an American company. They're slightly black hat-ish, they're kind of the opposite of what we do. So you then are competing against that, and you're kind of setting yourself up for a problem before you've even got going, aren't you?
Yeah, there's actually a lesson to be learned with that one, because and this is a good example. So there certainly used to be more than there are now, kind of domain providers, domain sellers, who you go on their website, and if you searched for a term quite a few times, they would speculatively buy the .com, and then they would be able to inflate the price of it. And that's what happened with GrowTraffic. So I was looking for the GrowTraffic domain, and I searched for that, for me being me and having lots of, I was thinking of lots of different kind of ideas. And I think it was something like August, I started searching for GrowTraffic, and they bought the .com. And then they put it back for sale for a bit more. And I didn't want the .com anyway. I want the .co.uk. But you've got to be careful and I didn't know this. I didn't recognize this at the time. I kind of knew it, but this was the first time it really came home to me that there are sites out there that are slightly less, slightly unscrupulous. You want to be going to one of the leading kind of registrars, somebody like 123reg or 1&1, or whoever it might be. Don't go to 1&1, you know.
Yeah.
It's all right. Is that a good answer?
Well, yeah. Well, it's fine. It's fine as an answer. I thought that I joke was going to go on a bit longer, so you did quite well.
All right. Well, I'll tell you. So it's called domain squatting. So this registration company held GrowTraffic.com for 5 years, didn't do anything with it. Then they sold it to another company that sold domains, who listed it somewhere. I didn't realize until it was too late. Somebody in America bought the .com and started trading. So bear in mind, this would probably be either 2014 or 2015, at which point I got in touch with this guy and said, you know, they'd only had the website live for about a month. And I kind of pleaded with them and said, we've been trading as this for 6 years now, or 5 years then, I think it was. Please, we come up with an agreement, and we had a bit of backwards and forwards.
Oscar, didn't they?
Yeah,
they said Oscar.
They did, and it's a guy called James Parsons who owns it. Actually, I do kind of see him every now and then floating around the web, but fortunately they've been the bane of our existence really for quite a while, because they've got a bad reputation. They sell junk traffic, and that's definitely not what we do. But
we get a lot of their complaints. Anyway, we're going to speed it along because we've not got all day to talk about GrowTraffic, much as you would sit there all day and talk about GrowTraffic. Awesome. So, Simon Dalley.
Yes.
Question number one. Should you choose a localized, a generic, or an industry TLD? And can you explain what that question means as well, please?
It's my first. It depends.
All right, there we go. It depends. Of course it does.
So there are.
What's the difference, first of all, please?
So there's 3 different things that you just mentioned there. So a localized domain name like .co.uk is geared towards anybody who's selling products in the UK. The benefit of that is that Google will see that, and it will provide, it will might give you a bit of a ranking kind of benefit within the UK. Something like a .com domain is a international kind of generic domain. So if you want a generic domain, then you go for something like that, like .com, .net, .info. I believe that there are some localized domains that, because of the way that they are used by different companies and different organizations, they eventually become considered to be generic top level domains. But that leads us on to other examples. So quite often you'll see websites that have .co, and that is a Colombian domain. So you're actually using a domain that's set up to favor people in Colombia. And that can be a problem for a number of reasons. One being that the kind of DNS server, so where the internet looks for that domain, if you like, is located outside our country. So one of the things that you can do is, if you go with .co.uk domain, then the internet, if you like, will be looking towards
the internet,
yeah, the red button. We'll be looking towards the UK. You can also choose some of the British dependencies as well. So, because they all share the same like service provider for domains. So,
okay. So basically,
let me just finish this point.
Right, very quickly.
And this comes on to industry terms. So an example of that is .io. .io is rapidly becoming used by companies, certainly in Britain, as a technology kind of brand URL. But it's actually the British Indian Islands or something like that in the Indian Ocean. But because it's managed in the UK, it's fine.
If you were a small business owner, if you're setting off now on your adventure to launch a small business in the middle of a global pandemic, and you are going to 123reg and you want to buy a domain name, does it massively matter which one of those you choose? I know it used to be absolutely critically important, didn't it? And the theory is that it's kind of becoming less so. Do people really need to consider what they're selling and where they're selling it and what kind of industry they're in? Or could they just, you know, go for the .co.uk one and work it out from there? What would be your advice?
I would advise, I always advise actually, people to buy the .co.uk and the .com. And that's just so they can protect it, even if they are going to go out on the if they're only going to trade in the UK. I'd recommend going out on the .co.uk. You can set the location in Google Webmaster Tools, Google Search Console, anyway, to let Google know what location you're targeting.
Do you advise people to buy variations of their name? So, you know, say, for example, if someone was called, I don't know, Red Media, would you advise them to buy like Red Media with an underscore and red.media and redmedia.co.uk, or would they just buy one version and then get the .co.uk.com version of it?
I think that depends on how if you're able to protect it by copyright. So something like Red Media, you probably would be able to copyright Red Media if it was available, trademark it, sorry, if it was available. I think. So I'd probably in that scenario suggest not to bother, and just stop anybody putting a website live there. All you'd have to do is go to the host with your trademark and say, these guys are, you know, almost, will probably use passing off argument, I guess.
Okay, right, let's move on because time's running away from us. How long, this is a question we get asked loads actually, how long should or could a domain name be? Like, is it so the general kind of rule of thumb is it's got to be personal, but at the same time you want it fairly snappy. So somebody was asking me the other day if they could have like their name and then their business name after it, which would have made a phenomenally long domain name. So what would your advice be on that situation?
There's no hard and fast rule. So what you've got to think is that the domain name is part of your brand, and does it do what it needs to do for your brand, especially in search engines. So when it appears in search engines or social media, you need it to be, it's not necessarily the character length, but the pixel length of it that's the important factor to consider. How long will it look? You know, will it be so long that it'll be cut off, for example, in the SERPs? You'd have to be quite long to be doing that, to be fair.
What are SERPs for the uninitiated?
Search engine results pages.
There we go. Okay, so what would you advise? So say if somebody was, you know, if they have a really long brand name, I can't think of a company at the moment that has one, would you advise them to kind of truncate it a little bit and kind of stick? Or I tell you what, some people do as well. Like, for example, I know somebody who their business is called one thing. In fact, I'm going to use it as an example. Their business is called Quality Time PA. It's Catherine Coughlin, for example. But her domain, I think, is like Get Me My Time Back. Is that a good idea? So, you know, that's gone for something that is kind of related to what she does, but it's not her brand name. Are people better going for their brand name rather than a kind of associated word like that?
So there's multiple ways of thinking about that. So this is in the olden days, the keywords that you had in your domain were really important as to how you would rank. So you always bought a kind of keyword-rich domain. The best example that I can think of is B&Q, who have DIY.
Yeah, there we go.
And probably when they first did that, that was hugely beneficial to them from a search perspective. Probably now, since about 2010, they changed the rules because every man and his dog was building these little microsites all over the place that were just exact match domains, exactly, you know, matching a query, and they rank right at the top of the of Google. So they stopped that by making people focus more on the brand, rather than just trying to game a search engine. Focus more on creating a brand. So I'd always say, if possible, go with your brand name.
Okay, there we
Try
go.
not to truncate it.
Yeah, unless it's ridiculously long, in which case try and maybe shorten it a little bit. But I mean, I really, that comes back to branding anyway, because your brand name probably shouldn't be, you know, a whole sentence, should it? So kind of ties in. Right. Next question then. Should you register a new domain, or is it okay to recycle an expired one?
I would suggest, wherever possible, to register a new domain. There are pros and cons for both these things. So people will buy an old domain, an expired domain, or a domain that somebody's selling, because they want to benefit from the history associated with that domain. So then they'll buy an aged domain in order to, because the age of a domain is a factor in terms of ranking. So too,
there are companies that will sell, expired domains with this for vast quantities of money, won't they? You can pay, hundreds, if not thousands of pounds for one of these domains.
I'm just trying to think of Cedo comes to mind. So there are a number of companies out there that do it, loads of them, and there are benefits to it. If you do get a good age domain that's got a good backlink profile to it already, then you can pretty much, in theory, can pretty much rank for various related terms. But that's where the next problem is, that because of Google's historical bias, if you buy a domain that you think is relevant to you, but it's been doing something else in the past, then you might find that you rank for the stuff that it was doing before and struggle to make it rank for the new topic that you want it to rank for. You might have an uphill battle to change topics, to change the kind of topical relevancy of what's on the website.
So would you say only do that, only buy a recycled one if it is exactly what you, or very closely matched to what you are going to do with it? So say, for example, Liz is watching. Hi Liz, I can't reply to you in the chat box for some reason, it won't let me, but say if Liz wanted to launch a website that was on www.photography.co.uk, that would kind of be all right, because it's the same thing that she's going to be doing, isn't it? So it would be worthwhile paying for that money. Whereas if she was going to be creating, I don't know, videos, probably not a good idea to go for that one.
Probably that's the kind of argument. Then the other thing that you need to consider is whilst it might look like it's got a great domain authority or whatever, however they position it on those websites, it's actually understanding what the backlink profile is all about. What is the history of that domain? Because once you've bought somebody else's domain, you get all that forever. It's difficult to get rid of, and you might just find that it's just spam, it's just crap.
We get quite a lot of emails, don't we, to GrowTraffic saying, like, would you like to buy, I don't know, for example, SEO.com. I know that one's taken, but people, and like I say, they are selling those domains for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds. Is it ever worth paying that amount of money for a domain?
Yeah, in some respects it can be. You still have to put the work on. You're still going to have to. And quite often, it depends if they come with the website that they've previously had on them. Sometimes, quite often, you'll get the website as well. You get all the content, so you're not just buying a domain, you're buying a business almost. And
exactly. That is what it's like, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what you're buying into.
And so you've got to do your due diligence, just like you would if you were buying anything else. You mentioned something that I wanted to ask you about, because this is another thing that a lot of people come to us. It's quite an old-fashioned SEO technique, isn't it? You mentioned people having multiple domains and multiple websites, and people will still come and ask us about this. They'll say, well, I've got this is my main website. I'm going to buy this domain and this domain and this domain and point them all at the right one. Is that still a valid SEO technique? Is that still going to help? Or
do you mean that you would take your take another domain, an existing domain, and redirect it to the new one?
Yeah.
Or do you mean have multiple microsites?
The first one, but people have also suggested the second one.
Okay, so yeah, it's a riskier strategy now to redirect old expired domains and things like, buying domains to point them just at your website with 301s you can result in you getting a penalty. But if you've got old domains yourself that you've had microsites on, for example, and you just redirecting them to your own website, it shouldn't be a problem.
And what about the multiple microsites? Again, that's quite an old-fashioned technique, isn't it? People still want to try that.
It is an old-fashioned technique. It does tend to work in local situations still. So if you bought an exact match keywords kind of domain, keyword domain, for example, you might say we're in Bake-Ups, you might say removal man Bake-Up or something like that. Locally, it does tend to still have some weight.
But there are some caveats about that, aren't there? What are the things you still have to remember about
that? Caveats in terms of, well, for one thing, Google might stop it at any point. That's probably the biggest thing to bear in mind. As the index becomes more complicated and bigger, they're always looking for ways to kind of strip it down and get rid of the excess and the crap. The problem is that the websites tend to be rubbish. That's the other problem, that they because they're a microsite on an exact match domain, they're quickly knocked together, quickly put up, they rank for a bit, and then they drop. And are taken over, taken the place by companies that focus on their brand.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the general rule is, if you're going to do that, you have to have a really valid reason for doing it, and you have to do it properly. Like, don't just have a one page for Bake-Up and one page for Waterfoot and one page for Stackstead. You really need to have it. You're going to have to build that website as though it was your main website and add content and justify it and have a reason, and have all the things there. So the problem that you then have is that you're then, first of all, competing against yourself for the same keywords, but also you're having to massively split your budget in terms of your time and your money. You end up with 4 or 5 websites where you're having to put the same amount of time and investment when actually you could have just done it with one. So it can be kind of, yeah, if you're quite a big company, and as you say, if you operate very localized in different areas around the country, then it can have value. But for just your average small to medium business, it doesn't tend to be worth it. The payoff, like you say, is short-lived, and then you just end up with a massive what's the word? Contract, if you like.
Yeah, I think for most businesses, you've got to say to yourself, look at the marketing that you're doing already, especially if you're kind of doing SEO, or you're doing blogging, or you're promoting yourself on social. You've got to say to yourself, this is hard work. It's a slog. It's a graft. And do I really want to do this again for something else? Or have I been so successful with what I've already achieved that I'm going to do it with something else? So that's kind of the question. The other thing to point out is that it is against Google's webmaster guidelines. So if you were ever reported by, say, a competitor for doing it, you could be penalized for having done it.
Yeah.
And that will penalize not only your microsites, but potentially your brand site, your money site as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, time is running away from us. We are going to go slightly over because we started slightly late. But does it matter who you register your domain with, or which registrar is your ISP? So what does that mean, first of all?
So
what's the domain register?
So the ISP it just means internet service provider. So the people that you register
Sky or Post Office or BT or whatever, isn't it?
No, so that's like 123 Reg or name servers or whoever that might be. So not not your broadband supplier. No, that's slightly different. So
so it's the person your registrar is the person who you've bought your domain off.
Yes, but the ISP the ISP could be different than that person. So, for example, you might buy something. You could, if we had a reseller account for a domain registrar, you buy it off us, but we would probably, because I always use 123reg, we'd probably have an account with 123reg, looks like us, but your ISP would be 123reg. So that's the difference, and it does have an impact because all these companies are physically located somewhere. They've got a physical server somewhere, and that means that if you're in the UK and your physical server of where your domain is in the south tip of the South America, the internet has to go all that way over there. The internet. The internet looks over there, goes all the way over there, and comes back. Now it's fast, but there's still switches involved and routers involved and things that slow that process down ever so slightly. It's not exactly light speed. So it's always better to have it local to you.
And how do you know that?
That's where you've got to do your research, you've got to do your homework. Do
they tell you that? So if you're like your average small to medium business owner, you're going to log on to 123reg, you want to buy a domain. How are you going to know? Is that where you go to the Whois register?
You can have a look on Whois. It doesn't. It might give it away and it might not. So I think that it would just depend. I think on Whois you've just got the address of the ISP on there, maybe, which 9 times out of 10 will be the same country that the DNS server is in.
Okay, so basically try and get something that's based in the UK. If you are based in the UK, try and get something that's in the same country.
Yeah, and if you're a local business, there's data centers based in the center of Manchester, for example. Go there. If you want to really, get into it, then that's what you do.
And is that becoming more? Sorry, go on.
It's not just about registering with the right person, because it doesn't actually, or the right company. It doesn't actually matter. You can transfer it between ISPs, so you can transfer it to the right place for you at some point if you want.
Does it matter who you buy it off? Because I know sometimes you can go to domain names, you can go to 123reg, you can go to GoDaddy, you do a search, they'll bring it up. Does it matter who you buy that domain off, or can you do a bit of shopping and find the cheapest one? How would you advise people to go about doing that?
Well, yeah. I mean, buying it off all those people that you've just mentioned, most of them are in separate companies. I think 2 are the same. But that will determine where the physical location of their server is for that. That will have an impact. But you can, you'll be able to go and find them. You can often find a cheap deal with somebody where they'll say the first year buy your .co.uk for £2.99, for example, and then after that it'll shoot up to like £11.99 a year or whatever it is to keep paying for that.
I've seen that actually. There's quite a few now where they're kind of $2.99 for the first year, and then they shoot up to like $29.99. And people haven't clocked that, have they? They don't realise that at the time, and then they'll send us an email saying, "Why am I suddenly having to pay this for this thing?" Like you rent it, don't you? You rent it, so you have to continually pay for it.
Yeah. It's like renting a PO box somewhere. That's probably the best way to think about it.
Okay, right. So there we go. We are out of time. So final top tip, Dalley, for people who are, again, kind of small businesses, they're just going out and buying the domain for the first time. What would your advice for them be to
do? Focus on something that is easily recognizable to your brand, preferably something that is relatively short, preferably a domain where you can get both the .co.uk if you're in the UK and the .com, and locate it locally in the UK if that's the case. Likewise, have the knowledge that if you're a technology provider, for example, or if you're in a specific business, it may be okay in certain circumstances to use an industry domain, like we could use GrowTraffic.agency, for example.
Okay, that's it. And if you are in any doubt, you can drop us an email at GrowTraffic. Simon Dalley loves domains, don't you? So you'll talk to anybody about domains.
Do you know what I never mentioned? So I did an experiment with domains years and years ago with a .gb.net domain, and to see if I could make it rank in the same way as a .co.uk domain. Do you know what? We finished, haven't we? So it's on the website somewhere. Go and read about it.
Do you know what though? I've just realised we built this. So Tracy Heatley had a question for me, and this was one of the things I've built as this that we were going to talk about. There was a lot of scaremongering going on, wasn't there, around when we left Brexit, all of the .eu domains were suddenly going to stop working, and Tracy Heatley had been advised this by somebody, and so she asked me if it was true. Can you just explain what that kind of rumour and myth is all about?
I believe that I don't think it's a rumor or a myth. I think there's some truth in it. That about 2019, the registrar the company that looks after the .eu domains started getting in touch with everyone to say after a certain point, your .eu domain will be no longer valid. So theoretically, when you buy a .co.uk domain or a .eu domain, whatever it is that's got a location specific, you're supposed to be trading in that country. That's the whole point. So that's why it's problematic with domains like .co, where it's actually a Colombian domain. I think they've said that businesses won't be able to, UK businesses won't be able to register a .eu domain from the first month of this year, I think it was, or whenever it was, unless they have a trading base within the EU.
Within the EU. But people will still be able to. People from the EU can still access the .co.uk website and vice versa. It doesn't stop traffic. It doesn't stop commerce, does it? It's literally just to do with those domain names.
Yeah. The big problem is that if you've built a business up on a .eu domain, and that it gets taken away from you, all the history you built up over time, in theory, is going to get taken away as well. So I suppose the best thing that you need to be doing in that situation, if you've not done it already, I'm guessing most people will have done, is to put another front-facing domain up and redirect all the URLs to that, and then hope that Google will transfer the page of the domain authority, that it'll recognise that the .eu domains have been taken down. I don't know how that'll work.
As with anything with Brexit, it's a play it by ear situation, isn't it? So we'll have to see what happens. Anyway, we have gone way over time.
As a finding out in Northern Ireland. Sorry, go on.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Final top tip, and then we're going.
Oh, I've done my top tips. Let's go.
All right. My top tip is just pick something sensible. Don't go crackers. Match it to your brand. Pick a sensible name, and off you go. There we go.
Oh,
that's it.
Squex.com. I once owned Squex.com.
Nice.
SQUEX.com, and I sold it to a guy in America. I can't remember. Hundreds of pounds it was. I don't remember.
Squex sounds like something you're going to get if you eat a dodgy kebab. So I think let's good job you got rid of that one. Anyway, I'm going to press stop now, and you always tell me off for pressing stop too soon. So let's start waiting.
Let's start waiting.
Now press stop. Bye everyone. See you in 2 weeks' time. Bye.